It's about time you have an easier, more efficient way to get caught up on the news. The Newsworthy breaks down the day's top stories in less than 15 minutes and gives you some lighter conversation starters along the way. Search The Newsworthy wherever you're listening now and follow or subscribe to The Newsworthy today.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace.
Last year, I went through many different life changes. I needed to take a pause and examine how I was feeling in the inside to better show up for the ones who need me to be my best version of myself.
When you're navigating life's changes, Talkspace can help. Talkspace is the #1 rated online therapy, bringing you professional support from licensed therapists and psychiatry providers that you can access anytime, anywhere.
Living a busy life, navigating a long-distance relationship, becoming a first-step father, Talkspace made all of those journeys possible. I could speak with my therapist in the office. I could speak with my therapist in the comfort of my home. I was never alone.
Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance, no problem. Now get $80 off your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
You are listening to the One Day at a Time podcast. On this podcast, my guests share their stories of alcoholism, addiction, and how they recovered so that you can too. My hope is that you find the inspiration and resources you need to let go of what's holding you back so that you can transform into the person you were always meant to be. Ready? Here we go.
Welcome to the podcast. My name is Arlena, and I'll be your host. I've been sober for over 31 years, and I thought I had a pretty good idea of what makes people change and what keeps them stuck. Then I sat down with Nir Eyal. He's the best-selling author of Indistractable, and now he has a new powerful book called Beyond Belief. He reminded me of the missing piece that so many of us in recovery forget. It's the reason why there is a gap between knowing what to do and actually doing it. The missing piece isn't willpower or more knowledge, it's belief. And the good news is beliefs are actually tools that you can choose. In this episode, you'll learn the #1 reason why people fail at any goal, whether that's drinking, building a business, changing a habit, is simply because they quit, and the one belief shift that can change all that. The difference between pain and suffering and learning how to separate the two is the key to breaking free from cravings, self-sabotage, and the patterns that keep you stuck. We're also going to talk about Byron Katie's The Work, which is 4 questions, a turnaround exercise that you can use today to get peace of mind around any person or situation that is really draining you. I can't wait for you to hear this episode, so without any further delay, please enjoy this episode with Nir Eyal.
Funny story. I was reading the book Beyond Belief, and I'm super excited. I got a ton of notes, and I was all about it. And then in chapter 4, you're talking about a gal who had this $300 million exit. She had started a nonprofit, this gal, Anne. And I don't know what possessed me. I don't typically do this, but I looked up her name, and the first picture that comes up is a picture of her and Brett Eaton. And I had just interviewed Brett for this book that came out.
Oh, there you go.
I was like, wow, small world. And I was
Small
like,
world.
oh. And I'm
That's
a
awesome.
huge fan of My First Million, and they had done an episode featuring her. So
Yeah,
I knew her
yeah.
story, and I was like, oh, that's right. So that was super fun. But I am so excited to talk to you about your book, Beyond Belief. And
Thank you.
I was telling you, I'm holding, if you're listening on the podcast, I'm holding up Indistractable, which I use to this day because I feel like Indistractable really answered for me the question, how do I do the things I know to do? Other people call it how to stop procrastinating. But
And I don't know if everybody can see this because there are a lot of folks who are listening, but what you've just shown me is catnip for authors because you have all these dog ears and little bookmarks and flags in the book. That is like the best compliment you could ever give an author.
Yeah, and listen, this is from a while ago. When did Indistractable
2019.
come out? 2019. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're on track to do a book every 5 or 6 years?
5 or 6 years. That's kind of my cadence. I do a lot of research and have a lot of drafts that don't make it. And
Oh
it's
my
really important to me
goodness.
that not only do the techniques work, but they're backed by peer-reviewed studies. So there's about 30 pages of citations to peer-reviewed studies so people can actually see, hey, this isn't just stuff I made up. This is
Right.
good research-backed advice.
And listen, thank you for doing the research because those research articles are sometimes the abstracts are hard to sift through and to glean like what is the practical application of all the scientific research, which I love, but I need a translator. So I feel like thank you for being the translator. And I'm sort of a bottom line kind of girl. Just tell me what to do. I'll do
Yes,
it.
exactly. And thankfully, the scientists are super smart and they do great research, but they're really bad at translating it. So
Yes.
that's my job. If they weren't bad at it, if they were good at it, I wouldn't have a job. So
Right.
that's
So we're like
my
a
job.
team. We're like a
Yeah,
team.
exactly. Exactly. And you
Yeah.
know what the crazy thing is that a lot of the studies are not so good. We kind of hear, trust the science. At times the science sucks. The science is really poorly
True.
done. And so you always
Yeah.
have to do not only like to look at the abstracts, look at the conclusions, you also have to see how the studies were actually conducted and can they replicate? And this is a big reason why I got so fascinated by beliefs, because there are so many falsehoods about the placebo effect and what it can and can't do and the power of beliefs and magical healing and thinking. And, there's just so much misinformation out there about even the stuff that is backed by research isn't necessarily backed by good research. And so I really wanted to
Yes.
kind of separate the wheat from the chaff so people can use this to improve their lives.
That sort of reminds me of my sarcastic, half of all doctors are below average.
Very true. That's right.
So it's good. So it's good that people like you are really able to sort of sort through it all and glean what's really effective, I suppose, and help
Absolutely.
people like me apply this stuff because I'm a action kind of oriented person, right? Like mood follows action. And listen, we're talking to an audience, just so you know, that are people who are interested in recovery, like they want to stop drinking, they want to stop doing drugs. And then the other part of the group that listens are people who are in recovery, who are really trying to be deliberate about their lives. What are you going to do from here, right? Who are you now? How do you want to spend your time? Who do you want to be? What impact do you have in the world? And so what I thought was just really interesting was indistractable was how to stop procrastinating. And that's just not doing it justice, but identity shifting and that. And beyond belief was like deeper. So a few years ago, I did a certification in hypnosis and was really fascinated with this idea that beliefs are just ideas that are repeated, that are accepted as truth. Because what I see in the work I do is people have these patterns, right? They have a feeling, they make a decision, they take an action, they experience the law of cause and effect, and then they experience an outcome. And sometimes when people have these repeating patterns, that to me is an indication that there is an error in the presupposition. There is an error in the belief somewhere. And so I've kind of been on that track for a while. And then I started reading this and I was like, oh my God. And what I love the way your book is laid out is that, because I'm always like, I'm just going to the back of the book and just get the answers. And then I started reading, like, oh, it's not like that. Yeah. I was looking at for just tell me what to do. What is the solution? But then I started reading it. And what I realized is you take a concept, there's like a case study, and there is the reframing of beliefs. Like, what is the belief? And here's the reframe. So there, at the end of every chapter, there's like exercises. So you're building brick by brick this concept of why beliefs are so important. And maybe that's sorry, I'll let you talk.
No, I love it. This is fantastic. I'm enjoying it. I don't know if anybody else is enjoying it, but I'm having a blast.
Listen, I just do this for me, really. And hopefully other people get a benefit out of this. But if we're just going to take a step back and think about, where this all started, did you start with like, who is this for? Like, who should listen to this episode? Why? Like, what are they going to get out of it?
So I write books not because of what I know, but because of what I want to know. And so when an area of my life I am stuck in for whatever reason, I read other people's books about it. I talk to my wife about it. I talk to my friends about it. And if I still can't solve the problem, I got to write a book about it. Because, and this is exactly what happened with Indistractable, right? All the books out there said, well, stop using technology, stop checking email. And they were written by professors with tenure telling us not to use email. Well, thanks, stupid. Like, that's not helpful advice. Like, I have to use social media. I have to use email. I have to use these technologies or I don't have a livelihood. I'm going to lose my job. So I really wanted practical solutions that are also backed by good research. And what I learned was with beliefs is that I think beliefs are the most important thing to understand before you read any other self-help books. Because if you don't understand this operating system that is running in your mind, that is upstream of your behaviors, that your behaviors depend upon, you won't effectively be able to change behavior. I think there's a common misconception that motivation is just about doing the right thing so that you can get the reward, right? Do the behavior so that you can get the benefit. If that were the case, we'd all have six-pack abs and be multimillionaires because we all know what to do. Yeah, quit drinking. Okay. Okay.
Just stop.
Do you want to keep? Yeah, just stop. Do you want to stop drinking? Yes. Okay. Do you know how to stop drinking? Yeah, I stopped drinking. Okay, well then do it. Okay.
Right. That helps
There's
nobody.
something missing here. Or even worse is you have to believe in yourself. Just believe, right? Like it's an on-off switch that if you could magically find, you could turn it on. Well, there's a methodology here. There's a lot more to it because if you don't have an underlying belief in the benefit, meaning you trust you will get the outcome. So for example, let's say you work for a boss who doesn't have your best interests at heart, right? Maybe you don't believe that they're going to give you that promotion. They're going to give you that raise. You're going to lack motivation. You're not going to work very hard. Much more often, what if you don't believe in the behavior, right? What if you don't believe in yourself to stop drinking, to do the thing you need to know, you need to do, even if you know exactly what to do. And frankly, today, look, if you don't know what to do, Google it, ask ChatGPT. You can find the answer to pretty much everything. There's no longer a constraint on knowledge. We can find the information. You don't have to go to the library. You don't have to ask an expert. Just Google it and you'll find out how to do something. But it's not good enough to know how to do something, the behavior. It's not good enough to even want the benefit. You have to have those underlying beliefs. That's what keeps it together. So belief is not a straight line. It's a triangle. You need the behavior, you need the benefit, and you need the belief. And so how do you cultivate those beliefs? You start with one, understanding what beliefs are, the different kinds of beliefs, and then the three powers of belief. And once you understand that structure, that framework, now a whole nother world opens up.
And I got to say that as I was going through this material, I was thinking about the person who has tried to quit drinking over and over. And they go through these periods of willingness. They take action, something happens, they relapse, and they're back where they started. And it is a very demoralizing experience. Yeah. And it's not just people who want to quit drinking. I've been sober for over 31 years, and I have other areas of my life that I've tried to, I've had a side hustle since I was 12, and I've had these illusions of grandeur. But if you experience sort of failure after failure, it's very demoralizing. And I think a lot of people, I feel like there's like the big three, there's romance, finance, and fitness, right? Fitness being like in the health genre. And if you have a pattern and you keep trying different things, but you keep quote unquote failing, it's very easy to just want to be resigned and just be like, well, I'll just be happy with where I am. If you're a sober entrepreneur who knows exactly what you should be doing to grow your business, but you're still procrastinating, overthinking, or just spinning your wheels, you are not alone. The problem usually isn't discipline or motivation. It's that under stress, your nervous system gets stuck in survival mode, which makes consistent execution almost impossible. I've spent over 30 years helping people break through these patterns. In my Inner Compass coaching program, I help sober entrepreneurs retrain their nervous system for action and finally build consistent momentum. If you're ready to stop fighting yourself and start moving forward, visit arlenaallen.com and book a no-obligation call with me today. And maybe you can talk a little bit about the motivation triangle that you were talking about a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the behavior, benefit, and belief. How you have to have all three at the same time in order to sustain motivation. And it turns out that sustaining motivation is really the hallmark of success. That if you think about why do people fail at a goal, it's not because they don't know what to do. It's not because they lack willpower. It's not because of their resources. The number one reason people fail, sounds pretty elementary when you say it out loud, it's because we quit. It's because we quit. That's why. So there's a really wonderful study that demonstrates this that was conducted back in the 1950s by a researcher by the name of Kurt Richter. And Richter took these rats, he put them in a cylinder halfway filled with water, and he wanted to time how long the rats could swim for. So in case you're curious, a wild rat, if you put it in a cylinder, is going to swim for about 15 minutes before it gives up and dies. Okay, so Richter observed this. Then he did the next part of the experiment. He took a new group of rats, he dropped them in the glass cylinder, and he watched them swim until about 15 minutes. And just at the 15-minute mark, when he knew they were about to give up, he pulled them out of the cylinder, dried them off, let the rat catch its breath, and plunk back into the cylinder it went to keep swimming. Now, there's a trick here. There's always a trick in these psychology studies. How much longer did the rat swim for? Right now that the rat had been conditioned to expect that salvation may be possible, how much longer did the rat swim for? So some people say twice as long, 3 times as long, 4 times as long. Imagine that. Imagine if I could tell you that there is a secret to quadrupling how long you persist. If you're trying to see, how much longer could you resist temptation to drink, or persist running a marathon, or keep studying on that hard exam, whatever the case might be. If there was some kind of wonder intervention that could increase your persistence 4x, that would be crazy. That would be unbelievable. Well, the rats didn't swim 4 times longer. They swam for 60 hours, not 60 minutes, 60 hours. They went from 15 minutes, 240 times longer, 60 hours of swimming. How? How is that possible? Their bodies didn't change. The experiment, their condition, the environment didn't change. We can't ask what their beliefs were. We can't ask the rats what they thought, but we believe that there was something going on in their brains that suddenly assessed the situation differently, that now that there was salvation might be possible, they could be saved somehow. And so they kept trying. And that turns out to be the definitive trait of who succeeds. It's not having the perfect answer. It's not, the one miracle cure. It's not the silver bullet. That doesn't exist. It's persistence. It's trying, and even when you fail, trying again and again and again. And so what's so remarkable about this study, and why I think it's so important for everyone to understand, is that nothing changed in the rats other than something unlocked in their brains. It wasn't their physical bodies that suddenly became stronger. It was that something unlocked, that a new belief took hold and allowed them to persist. And so that's the remarkable power of belief, is that it allows us to do things we previously thought were impossible. Now, how does it do that? Through these 3 powers of belief. The powers of belief are: beliefs change what you see. We call this attention. Beliefs change what you feel. We call this anticipation. And beliefs change what you do. We call this agency. And just as you said, in a downward spiral, when you have these beliefs that are reinforced, that tell you you've tried, you failed, you tried, you failed, versus you've tried and succeeded and tried and succeeded, it's a vicious cycle versus a virtuous cycle. You sap your agency, you sap your motivation to try again. And so this is why it's so critical for everyone to understand their limiting beliefs. There's 2 kinds of beliefs. We have limiting beliefs, beliefs that sap your motivation, that make you less likely to persist, that increase your suffering. And then we have what we call liberating beliefs, beliefs that supply motivation, that makes you more likely to persist, that decreases suffering. And so the remarkable thing is that we can choose beliefs. You can't choose facts. Facts are objective truths, right? Facts are true whether you believe them or not. You don't choose faith. Faith is something that does not require evidence. That's faith. Beliefs are in the middle. Beliefs are tools, not truths. These are things that we believe in them because they serve us, because they decrease suffering, because they make our lives better. We can choose them. But the vast majority of people never think that way. They don't ask themselves what their limiting beliefs are. We can't see them. They're hidden. So unless we take them out and look at them and say, wait a minute, why do I believe this? Why do I believe that pain is bad? How many people have, when they have a craving for a substance or a drink or a scroll or whatever is doing them harm that they wish they could resist, one of the biggest problems we face is that we think pain is bad. Pain should be escaped from.
Yeah.
Just a belief. Just a belief, right?
Yeah, that's really it. That's really it. Like the core of like cravings. And when I hear people that when they give up, it's like an intensity, like the discomfort, like the intensity of the discomfort is so great that they quit, basically.
Yeah. But here's the crazy thing. Where is the pain? Where's the pain?
I asked somebody recently that who decided to quit. We were talking about like, where is the intensity of the craving? And I thought she was going to say it was like in her body. Like, no, she's like, it's in my mind.
It's in your mind. Well, she's right.
Yeah.
All pain is real. All pain is real. But pain doesn't happen in your shoulder or in your back or in your stomach. Pain happens in the brain. Yeah. Where else could it happen? It's a signal. It's just data that your brain is processing and interpreting and judging as good or bad. But it's just a sensation, right? We have case studies from soldiers in World War I who talk about intense pain. These studies where this is actually where the placebo effect was first discovered on the battlefields of World War I, where soldiers oftentimes would drag their injured buddies to the medic. And they would say, medic, you got to help my buddy. My buddy's been shot. You got to help my buddy. And the medic would turn to the soldier and say, soldier, your arm is missing. And the soldier didn't realize that half his arm was blown off.
Yeah.
So there is not necessarily a connection to pain and suffering. Those are two separate things. Pain is the data, is the signal from your nerves into your brain. Suffering is the interpretation of those signals. And so what I show throughout the book is that human beings have this tremendous power to separate pain from suffering or to create suffering where there is no pain. We can do both because there's a difference between sickness and illness. Sickness is in the body, right? Sickness is damage in the body. Illness is always in the mind. And so those can actually be separated. It's not easy, takes some work, but there's a methodology to it that actually thousands and thousands of people have utilized. In fact, one of the things that totally blew my mind that I would not believe if I did not see the video is hypnosedation, which, you mentioned, you know hypnosedation. It's unbelievable. It is totally wild.
Crazy.
It is so unbelievable. And tens of thousands of people do it all the time.
All the time.
In Switzerland, in Italy, in France. It's not done in America, but it's done throughout Europe. And
it's done on the DL.
Yeah, a little bit on the DL, but it does happen. Here's what it is. And this is the guy, Daniel Gisler, who I interviewed for the book, and I seen the video. Wow. The guy had metal screws pulled out of his bone, scalpel slicing through his flesh. For 55 minutes, he went under this operation. No local anesthesia, no general anesthesia. He was able to manage the pain, to manage the suffering, I should say, only through the power of his mind, because he had trained himself in this technique called hypnosedation. Now, I am not advocating for this, okay? I'm not saying that's not what the book is about. It's not about an advertisement to go do this technique. Use the anesthesia.
It's a case study.
The reason I show this is because if we know that the human mind can do that, can tune out pain so that people can go under the knife without fear, and it's not just a subjective expression. It's not just that he like bit the bullet and didn't say he was in suffering from the pain. No, we can see his heart rate is completely stable. His blood pressure is totally normal. His vitals didn't show any indication that he was having a surgery, and solely because of the power of the mind. So if he can do that, we can also learn to manage our cravings, to manage this discomfort, to see suffering differently, so that it doesn't lead us to things that we later regret.
Yeah, I think this is so exciting too, because it's like, well, how can we use this as a tool? And as you say in the book, beliefs are actually tools. And so I'm thinking there's people that get sober and then they're like, okay, now what? It's like, now all our dreams are possible. Now you're free from this thing and you can create the life you've always wanted. And what I see happening a lot, I think this happens to everybody, not just people in recovery, is that you begin to stretch beyond what you think your identity is. And you kind of, you invoke like imposter syndrome, like you're daring greatly. You're trying to go to the next level of whatever it is. I work with a lot of salespeople. So every salesperson, there's always like a next level, right? And so, but it's like, but then we have all this self-sabotage and the self-doubt, imposter syndrome. People get stuck. And what's really exciting about the work that you've laid out in this book, and there's some exercises. I downloaded all the bonus content, which was amazing, actually.
Good. I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah. I'm working with the 5-minute exercise that maybe we could touch on. Yeah, we'll touch on that a little bit later so people can have to stay to the end.
Which they can get for free, totally free.
Yes. It's so good. But the idea that we can really master our emotions so that we don't become paralyzed and stuck and fall to the resignation phase, that we can actually break through. Everyone's talking about these breakthroughs. We all want to break through to the next level. So this really feels very practical in that regard.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. What do you advise folks when you work with them? How do you help them?
Well, the way I help people is to typically start with like, what are you doing now? What are the actions you're currently taking? And it just sort of depends on what their goals are. If somebody wants to quit drinking, then it's sort of like, what are you doing now? And then we sort of slowly add in behavior change. I think of adding in things like self-care practices. And a lot of this is really emotion management tools. It's a lot of stress alleviation. And once they start creating some habits, there's connection, there's all kinds of things that they can do. I try to do it slowly, not to overwhelm the system.
Of course.
Yeah, doing things like service. But then once they're sort of in a habit, I do like to go deeper and sort of uncover what are the limiting beliefs, and sometimes we can do things like IFS or hypnotherapy to sort of reframe. And I see that that's what you were doing a lot in the book, is like at the end of every chapter, there's like these reframes. Can we kind of go over, you mentioned attention, anticipation, and agency. That's the see, feel, and do. I love the example that you have in the book with the optical illusion. Can you kind of describe that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. Instead of doing the optical illusion, which people can't see if they're listening to the podcast,
good point. Yeah.
I'll give you a riddle.
Okay.
That will demonstrate the same point.
Okay. It's not in the book, is it?
It's not in the book.
Okay.
But you may have heard this. If you've heard the riddle before, then don't answer. We'll give people a minute to try and think of the answer for themselves.
Okay.
Do you like riddles?
I do.
Okay. If you haven't heard this one, you'll like it. Okay. So there's a dad and his son who are driving on a deserted country road, and it's the middle of the night, no lights, completely pitch black. And all of a sudden, a deer jumps in front of the car. The car smashes into the deer. The father is instantly killed. The son is in critical condition and rushed to the nearest hospital. Have you heard this one before?
It sounds familiar, but I don't remember it.
Okay. The son is rushed to the nearest hospital, put on a gurney, goes into the operating room. The surgeon scrubs up, barges into the operating room as quickly as possible, looks at the boy and says, "I cannot operate on this boy. He's my son." How could that be? Don't say it if you know it. Do you know it?
I don't remember. I think I knew the answer at one point.
Think about it. What do you think? Okay, so start fresh. Hopefully you forgot, but start fresh. You want me to say it one more time? I can say it again.
I have totally forgotten. But so the dad is killed instantly.
I'll say it again. So there's a father and son who are driving on a road. They smash into a deer. The father is killed instantly. The son is rushed to the local hospital. The surgeon barges into the operating room, takes one look at the boy and says, "I cannot operate on this boy. He's my son." How can that be?
I have no idea. I don't remember this one. It's not embarrassing.
No idea? Can't think of the answer? It's, by the way, so you feel better. Don't feel bad. 83% of people don't know the answer.
Okay.
83% of people can't figure out the answer. So
I know there's somebody listening to this screaming the answer. I don't know.
Well, you're going to scream the answer at yourself in a minute when I tell you what it is.
Okay.
Give up?
I do.
The surgeon was the boy's mom.
Oh, I should know this. I'm a woman.
Of course you should.
Oh my goodness.
But here's the thing. What happened just now? You have a perceptual filter. You have a belief based on prior experiences. 80% of men, statistical fact, 80% of surgeons are men.
Yeah.
But 20% are women. It is not magic. It's not like the one. It's funny. One time I told this riddle to somebody, and they looked at me dead in the eye and said, "I know the answer. I totally know the answer." The mother was the deer. So it wasn't that. Very simple.
Do you know what I almost said? I almost said it's the son's other dad because there's two dads.
A gay marriage also could be true. That could, you should have said that is also an answer. It's not the answer. The most probable, statistically, the most probable answer is, 20% of surgeons are women.
Yeah.
But here's the amazing part.
Oh, that's
you
embarrassing.
didn't even consider that as a possibility.
Right.
Your brain couldn't even see that reality, which is reality. 20% of surgeons are women, because your brain doesn't see reality. Your brain sees probabilities that it predicts of reality. So the way it's called predictive processing. The brain is constantly looking at what is happening, and based on what it predicts will happen, that is actually what it perceives, what it expects. So in your prior experience, 80% of surgeons are men. And so that's what you expected. That's all you could see. You were looking at every different potential answer, except the one that now in hindsight is obvious, and you'll never not get that solution ever again.
Well, let's hope, because I know I heard that before and I already forgot.
By the way, it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. It doesn't matter if your mom is a surgeon. Even they get it wrong.
Wow.
It's
Yeah, I
crazy.
have a client who's actually a surgeon that's a woman.
Okay. So it doesn't mean you're sexist. It doesn't mean there's no judgment here. Okay. 83% of people don't get it. And probably those who did get it heard it before.
Okay.
But why do I tell this riddle? If the brain doesn't let us perceive something that, once we're told the answer is so obvious, that's what it does to everything.
Yeah.
That's what it does when we see somebody who annoys us and we can't understand why they behave that way. Or somebody who hurt us in the past, maybe caused us trauma, was mean to us, and we don't understand that person who hurt us was working with the best tools they had. We can't see it. We don't offer it. We can't even imagine anything but the story we are comfortable with, that we expect, that we have drilled into ourselves for our whole lives.
Yeah.
That's why I tell this riddle. That's why there's that optical illusion in the book, to show people how you cannot trust what your brain tells you.
Right. Seeing is not believing.
Right. That in fact, believing is seeing.
Yeah. I've heard that, and I was like, I get it, but I'm always aware of like the skeptic who's going to be like, oh, that's really woo-woo, but it's not. And I really appreciate it felt like I actually saw your presentation with Ali Abdal earlier in the year. Oh, cool. So good. And I walked away from that presentation thinking that you made such a good practical, logical case on that, feelings aren't facts, beliefs aren't facts, and that we actually have the ability to start changing some of that so that we can have different experiences.
Yeah. Now, let me share with you, I think, the piece of feedback that I got from that session, and this is probably the most common piece of pushback that I get, that many times I hear that people say, well, you're saying beliefs are tools, not truths. Aren't you just telling me to gaslight myself? Like that person who hurt me. Yeah, that person who hurt me really hurt me, or that thing that happened to me really happened to me. And I'm not arguing with that, right? Like whatever you think happened, I don't know you. I don't know what happened to you. I will tell you this, however, that you're already lying to yourself. We are already gaslighting ourselves. You just don't realize it. You're gaslighting yourself with your past beliefs that don't let you see a present reality. I'll tell you one thing, your memory is definitely not what you think it is. We know that memory is incredibly open to revision, that every time you think of a memory that you are definitely sure happened the way you remembered it, you are actually revising that memory every single time. Elizabeth Loftus did this amazing studies where she implanted memories in people, and 30% of them had these memories where they were absolutely sure that they were on a hot air balloon ride and they remember the wind blowing past them. They remember exactly what they wore. They had these vivid memories that did not happen. And so even when we have these past traumas, these past events that we are convinced, here's another great example. You probably remember this from the book. My friend Chris told me as we had coffee together a bunch, and I told him about the book I was writing and my research. And he tells me, actually what that reminds me of is the fact that I can't cry. He says, when I was a kid, I went to a funeral, and that funeral was of a cousin. And I think I was like 6 years old. And ever since that funeral, I decided I would never cry again because it was so painful. It was so traumatic. I decided I was never going to cry again. And I went through relationship after relationship, girlfriend after girlfriend who would break up with me because I wasn't emotionally available, that when we were having tough times, I was stoic. I couldn't cry. And then he told me, I told this to my sister a few weeks ago. And I told her about how this was a real problem in my relationships, that I couldn't seem to hold down a relationship because I couldn't cry because of this funeral I went to. And his sister turns to him and says, Chris, and this is his older sister. His older sister, I think, was maybe 10 years older, much older sister. And she says, Chris, I remember that funeral. You weren't there. Mom and Dad thought you couldn't handle it, and they left you at home with the babysitter. And he realizes this, and he tells me the story, and he's like, I had built an identity based on what I thought had happened to me, that I had reinforced time and time again. Every time I couldn't cry, I was seeing this memory in my head until it became, to me, a fact. But it wasn't a fact. It was a belief. And when he realized, wait a minute, this belief is a tool, not a truth. And even if you are absolutely sure that something happened to you and it's very terrible, absolutely, trauma happens. Terrible things happen all the time to people.
Yeah.
You don't have the luxury of fixing what happened to you in the past. That's done. But we always have the luxury of changing how we perceive our suffering and asking ourselves, is it helping us or is it hurting us?
I love the story that you told in the book about how you changed your relationship with your mom. And I think it was so powerful because one of the three big problems people have, repeating patterns, is in relationships and family relationships, especially like if you're overcoming addiction, trying to heal those relationships can be really painful. Like people do really have a lot of trauma, and that's oftentimes. But can you tell this story about your mom and the flowers?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And what's interesting, particularly when it comes to when people are struggling with compulsive behaviors, is, many of these impulses, they're not a character flaw. They're not certainly not a moral failing.
Right.
They're an impulse control issue.
100%.
It's that we have these uncomfortable sensations and we are looking for relief.
Yeah.
And the brain will go back to relief, whether that's too much news, too much booze, too much football, too much Facebook. We're going to find relief somewhere if it's made us feel better before. Any analgesic, anything that cures pain is potentially addictive if it provides relief. And
mine is too much information.
What's that?
Mine's too much information. I'm a self-help junkie.
Okay. Yeah. Anything can be something that we get addicted to. And what's amazing is that we oftentimes find that people who are struggling with impulse control, when they figure out how to deal with the pain of one area of their life, all of a sudden the compulsions get better because they're not looking to escape. They don't have those feelings they don't know how to deal with. They don't know how to deal with that guilt, the shame, the discomfort. I got to get out of here. I got to feel something different. And so they don't turn to those analgesics to cure their pain the way they did before in a harmful way. So I think that's why one of the best ways to deal with impulses that don't serve us is to deal with the underlying issues. And so many times, most of the time, I would dare say, it's about relationships. It's about one thing or another that somebody did to us, or we're afraid we did to somebody else, that haunts us, that hurts us, and we look for escape with whatever substance or behavior. So I'll give you this anecdote. Now, it's the level I'm willing to go into in terms of seems like a very PG example, but let's just leave it there because I wanted to make something that everybody could relate to.
It's
so
actually, to be fair, and I'm a mom, it is a really important example though, because I mean, we love our parents so much, and I had some issues with my mom, and after reading this story and how you interpret, by the way, you do talk about the work. hopefully I'm not ruining your story, but the way that you described how to use it, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, I was like, oh, I finally get it. Like it was So anyway, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
Great. Yeah. So I'll share what happened. So here's what happened. So my mom had her 74th birthday and I wanted to do something nice for her. And so what did I do? I wanted to buy her some flowers. Now, she was in Central Florida where I grew up, and I was in Singapore. And I decided to look, I'm do something nice for her. I'm going to make sure I call the florist. I'm going to make sure I research, the best Google reviews. I'm going to make sure that I found the right one. I stayed up till 1 a.m, ensuring that this florist was going to deliver those flowers exactly as I had ordered them. I go to sleep, 1 a.m. I pat myself on the back, said, Nir, you're a good son. Good job. I wake up the next day and I call my mom and I say, Mom, happy birthday. Did you get the flowers? And she said, yes, I did. Thank you very much for sending them. But just so you know, the flowers arrived half dead, and I wouldn't order from that florist again. To which I said something like, well, that's the last time I buy you flowers. And that went over just about as well as you'd expect. Not so good. So after the call, my wife turned to me and she said, would you like to do a turnaround on this? To which I said, no, I would not like to do a turnaround on this. I don't want your hocus pocus, touchy-feely mumbo jumbo. I want to vent.
No. Yeah.
Venting is what you're supposed to do. When someone pisses you off, you can't keep those feelings inside. You have to let them out, let off steam, tell people how you really feel. Yeah. Turns out that is terrible advice. And when you vent, you do nothing but reinforce this image, this effigy of other people. So the more you talk badly about somebody, you are reinforcing how you see them, because we don't see reality as it is. We don't see people as they are. We see our beliefs about people. And this is why a lot of times, it's amazing. I have many good friends. I'm not going to mention them by name, of course, but I have many good friends who are such sweethearts, nicest people, amazing. And then you watch them around their spouse and kids. They're terrible. To the people that are most important to them, but to a stranger, oh, how you doing? You having a good day?
Yeah.
To their kids and to their spouse, they treat them like garbage because they don't see these people as they really are. They see them as they believe they are, or much more common, they see them as they are. Oh, this is all the way back from the Talmud, that we don't see things as they are. We see ourselves. We see them as we are.
Right.
So that's a whole nother line of thinking. But anyway, back to the story of my mom. I didn't vent, and instead I did the work. This comes from the work of Byron Katie, who I greatly admire, so I can't take credit for this technique. I've altered it a bit, but she's basically channeled a technique that's 2,500 years old. It's all the way back to Aristotle, this technique of doing what's called a turnaround, as she calls it. Now, a turnaround starts with asking yourself 4 very simple questions. The first question is to look at your belief, to write it down, and ask yourself, is it true? So my belief was my mother is too judgmental and hard to please. Okay. Back me up here. Okay. Is that true? Clearly, my mother was too judgmental and hard to please. That is a stupid question. Right? Like, let's skip that question. Number 2, let's go on to number 2. Question number 2 is it absolutely true? Sounds like the first question. Is it true? Second question, is it absolutely true? Keyword being absolutely. Absolutely meaning all the time, without exception. Not any circumstance where it could be anything but what I believe, that my mother is too judgmental and hard to please. Absolutely means there's no potential other explanation. Cannot be, not even a 1% chance. Okay, I had to admit, maybe it's not absolutely true. That maybe she was telling me a statement of fact, right? She was just saying the flowers didn't look so good, right? Does that mean she was being judgmental and hard to please? Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe. Okay, so I let in a tiny crack of daylight to say maybe there's an alternative explanation. I don't have to believe that, just affirming it may not 100% be true in all circumstances that she was too judgmental and hard to please. Now, the third question, who am I when I hold on to that belief? When I believe that my mother is too judgmental and hard to please, how do I feel? Who do I become? Well, I'm short-tempered. I say things I regret. I'm impatient, and I'm not myself. I don't feel proud of what I said to her. Now, the fourth question, who would I be without that belief? Well, if I had some kind of magic wand and poof, I could let that belief disappear, I'd be at peace. I would be so angry at her. I would be more myself. So that's the 4 questions. What do we determine in the 4 questions? In about 30 seconds, I determined that this belief may not be true. I determined that it wasn't serving me. It wasn't making me feel good. And 3, that I'd be much better off without it. Okay, now that sets the stage for the turnaround. Now the turnaround, the point of the turnaround is not to change your mind. It's not to change your belief. You don't have to change your belief about anything. All you're doing is collecting a portfolio of perspectives, other viewpoints, which may offer you insight. That's it. You don't have to change your mind. You're just collecting options, like baseball cards. You're just collecting options. So the first belief was, my mother is too judgmental and hard to please. Okay, that's the first belief. Let's see if we can do a turnaround and collect other beliefs. What's the opposite of that belief? My mother is too judgmental and hard to please. And this is very difficult for folks because they don't like, the brain has what we call a psychological immune system. It's called an immunity to change. So just as if you had an infection in your finger, right? Let's say you had a splinter, the body's going to fight to get that splinter out by creating an infection. Your mind has the same mechanism. Your mind wants to reject any belief that you don't currently have. It really hates it. Okay. So you're going to feel uncomfortable here. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with feeling discomfort. It's okay. So what's the opposite of, my mother is too judgmental and hard to please? My mother is not too judgmental and hard to please. Could that be true? Now that's my job. Could that be true? Is there any possible explanation of how she wasn't actually being judgmental and hard to please? Was there another reason? Maybe she just didn't want me to get scammed. Maybe she was trying to be helpful and not hurtful. Is it true? Is it not? I don't know. I don't care. Beliefs are tools, not truths. The third belief, this is called a turnaround to the self. My mother is too judgmental and hard to please. Let's turn that around. I am too judgmental and hard to please. How could that be true?
Ouch.
Well, yeah, ouch. Exactly. I didn't say this is easy. But how could it be true? Again, I don't have to believe it. But how could it be true that not my mom, but I was being too judgmental and hard to please? Well, when my mom didn't say thank you in exactly the way that I had scripted in my brain that she was supposed to say thank you, in exactly the words that I wanted, and effusively praising me for being such a good son, I lost it.
Yeah.
So who was being judgmental? I was judging her reaction. I wanted her to thank me in a way that I had pre-scripted, and it didn't come. And so now I was mad. So I was being judgmental. Okay, here's another turnaround. I am too judgmental and hard to please towards myself. Yeah, exactly. Right?
Wow.
How could that be true? That sounds ridiculous. Ouch. Yeah, double ouch. How could that possibly be true? Well, the more I thought about it, I realized that this was an example of something that I put a lot of work into, and it didn't work out. And so when those flowers didn't arrive the way I had planned them to, what did that say about me? Now I felt incompetent. Now I felt inferior. Now I felt like I had screwed up, like that was my fault somehow.
Yeah.
And this is called a misattribution of emotion. We do this all the time. When we feel crummy, we look for the first person we can find, whether it's our family, whether it's our political opposition, whether it's whoever, a stranger, someone cuts us off. Oh, and we hate that person because we feel crappy about ourselves, right?
Yeah.
It's the oldest trick in the book. This is why bullies are bullies.
Yeah.
And that's what I was doing. That because I was mad that I had messed up somehow, she deserved blame, that she was judging me. Now, 4 beliefs now, okay? 4 different beliefs. I've collected a portfolio. Which one is true? All of them? None of them? Who cares? It doesn't matter. Beliefs are tools, not truths. We get so fixated on, yeah, but that's not true. It doesn't matter. Which one serves me? I'll tell you what, the first one only had one way out. Because that first belief, my mother is too judgmental and hard to please, demanded that she change so I could be happy.
That's what we all do.
Right?
We all do
It ain't
that.
gonna happen. It ain't gonna happen because she's got her own perceptual lens. She's got her own simulation that she's running in her brain on why she's right. And that's the only tool she's got. She can't get into my head and see my perspective. It ain't gonna happen. So by me insisting my mother's too judgmental and hard to please, the only way I'm gonna be happy is if she changes, I'm stuck. I'm miserable. I'm impatient. I'm not myself. I'm suffering. Whereas the other 3 perspectives give me peace, give me peace of mind. I can do something about those. I can realize that I don't have to blame her anymore. Now, it doesn't mean I have to vacation with her. It doesn't mean I have to be best friends with her. It doesn't mean I have to even forgive her. None of that. I'm not talking about any of that.
Right.
All it means is I can get peace of mind to be who I want to be, to live the kind of life I want, and I don't have to suffer anymore. That's what this whole process is about.
Yeah. And that's really operating from first principles. like, what is it that I really want? I feel like ultimately at the end of the day, we all want to have peace at all the things that we do. And that sort of speaks to the human nature of wanting to avoid things that are uncomfortable. But it's so interesting the way you're like this denial ninja. It's like the way that you're able to like break down these walls that we have that we're fighting against in such a practical, logical way that like you don't get defensive about it. Right. I think that's really what's so powerful about how you're laying all of this out is that you kind of break down the denials, break through our own mental constructs, and we can go back to operating from first principles. Because this whole idea of wanting other people to change so that we can feel better, I feel like that's sort of at the core of like the discourse that we have. I mean, listen,
so true.
I don't even want to say the P word, the political word, but it's like that's sort of at the crux of this whole thing is all these mental constructs that we have, and we just can't even see the forest for the trees.
It's so true. And we think that anything that causes us pain is their fault, is something else is doing it to us. Even if it's
attribution of emotion.
That's right. That's right. And that's why I think it's so important to separate pain from suffering. And sometimes that pain can come within our own bodies. Right. And that's what we blame. That's why a lot of people, in mental health, we don't call people addicts anymore. We used to. We don't call people addicts anymore because that denotes an identity. Right. An identity is something you are, not something that you are struggling with. And that's really harmful to think of yourself as, oh, I am an addict and this is who I am. It's coming from my genes and this is inevitable. There's nothing I can do about it. Because guess what? When you give up your agency, you don't do anything about it. It's impossible because why? Because you don't believe you can. So you don't even try.
Because you don't believe you can. Yeah, that's actually a nice segue. I know we have about 10 minutes. I didn't ask you if you had a hard stop, but.
Yeah, at the top of the hour, it would be perfect.
Okay. This is a good segue to agency, the power to do what you believe. And I'm looking at your book, How to Take Control of Your Life, Even When It's Impossible. Believe you have control even when you don't. Talk to me a little bit about what's important. How do we get to the place of having agency?
Agency is the ability to do what you say you're going to do as you believe. And so our limiting beliefs sap that motivation. They sap our ability to do what we say we're going to do versus our liberating beliefs give us more agency. And I think one of the misconceptions we have is that chaos causes pain and pain causes suffering. And a lot of times that chaos comes from trying to handle too much or do too much. And a lot of times that causes nothing more but more suffering. And so the solution, some people would say, well, do less, say no to things, right? Like
essentialism.
Essentialism, exactly. And I don't know if I buy it. I don't buy it. I'll tell you why I don't buy it. It goes all the way back to Schopenhauer. Schopenhauer said, the philosopher, he said, life is that which fights entropy. Life is that which fights entropy. That the very definition of what does it mean to live, to be a living organism, is that you are fighting the inevitable heat death of the universe. That everything will eventually disintegrate to dust. Everything will become chaos. Everything will become entropy. And so a living organism tries to arrange things to fight chaos. That is what you are doing by being alive. So if you look at a coral reef and all the intricacies, or a honeycomb with those perfect hexagons, or how organisms arrange themselves in order that should not exist in the universe. And yet we do. And so the fact that you are struggling, the fact that something is hard, the fact that you keep waiting for some imaginary perfect day to come, which never will, there will always be chaos, because that is what it means to be alive. This signifies the miracle of your existence. Thank God, or whatever force you believe in, the miracle of evolution, let's call it. That's what you believe in. Or if you have some kind of spiritual practice, how amazing is it that you even get to fight entropy in the first place, that you even have the luxury of chaos, because the alternative is lights out, right? Is never being born in the first place. Yeah. So I think, to me, that's just one of those simple secular prayers that I keep repeating to myself, that life is that which fights entropy, that the fact that I'm struggling means I'm alive. I'll stop struggling when I'm dead. Okay? Struggle should be celebrated. And so most of my day, like we do, like all these turnarounds that I do, and I do these turnarounds like 10 times a day with different things. Whenever I'm trying to will things to change that I can't. Now, it's very important to know the things you can change. That's what agency is all about. But it's also about understanding that you don't have to suffer from the things that you can't change. You can't change, my mom's reaction.
Right.
You can't change the past. Past already happened. So those type of things is where we want to assert what we can change and what we can't change. Now, there's a concept that's very important to understand called the locus of control. Locus of control, there's two kinds of locus of control. There's an external locus of control, and then there's an internal locus of control. External locus of control has to do with people who believe that things happen to them. It's where I was born. It's the economy. It's the political situation. It's whatever. That's tends to be what controls my life, are things outside of me. People with an internal locus of control tend to believe that they can exert meaningful action on their environment. So one is the environment controls me. One is me, I control the environment. Now, there isn't one right way to be. However, we do know that even if you are at the bottom of the barrel, even if socioeconomically you are disadvantaged, even if you are struggling, even if the cards are stacked against you, it turns out statistically you will do better in life. Live longer, healthier, make more money, have more friends, contribute more to your community when you have an internal locus of control. So again, beliefs are tools, not truths. Believing you have agency, believing you have control, believing you can change your environment makes you better off in every conceivable way. However, when it comes to how you view other people, not so good to have an internal locus of control. That you want to have an internal locus of control of your own behavior, but that assume others will act based on what happens to them. That when that person cuts you off in traffic, maybe they're rushing to the hospital because their parent is in critical condition. Maybe, that person who annoys you for whatever reason, you want to give them what's called the benefit of the doubt. The benefit of the doubt. In fact, this is how I measure love. That I think it's an important, again, one of these reminders that I tell myself throughout the day, love is measured by the benefit of the doubt. That you can tell who you love most based on who you give the most benefit of the doubt. That's how we measure love. What does that mean? When my daughter was born, I remember the day I held her, my life changed because I held this little bundle of pudge and everything changed in my brain. And I gave her all the benefit of the doubt. Now, do I love her because she made me feel good? She cried and she pooped and she peed and she needed to be fed all the time. And she wasn't it wasn't hedonic. It wasn't like, oh my God, this feels amazing. It's that I loved her so much because I gave her ultimate benefit of the doubt. That when she cried, I didn't say, how come you're crying? That's so annoying. No, that's the only tool she had. All she could do when she needs something is to cry. That's the only tool. Now, what happens when we grow up? We're all just babies, right? We're all just grown-up babies.
That's the truth.
And yet when we grow up, now if you do something I don't like, you're trying to annoy me. Why? Because we've lost the benefit of the doubt. Yeah, we've lost that benefit of the doubt. And so we want to assume for others, assume external locus of control, assume, just like that baby can't do anything but cry. It's the only tool she has. Same with everybody. Everybody's just operating on the best tools they have. And so we should give them the benefit of the doubt. Doesn't mean we have to be around them. Doesn't mean we have to forgive them. Doesn't mean we have to be chummy with them. It just means that we can gain greater peace when we give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, I noticed you actually have an exercise in the book that's like, what are 3 alternate explanations? And I think that is such an important practice when dealing with challenging people, is to constantly remind yourself what are 3 alternate explanations of why they're being this way. And like you said, if you give them the benefit of the doubt, you tend to be more gracious and generous, and it does change how we feel about them.
Right. And again, I want to emphasize, I'm not saying that you need to accept everything about people, right? If someone is harming you, you need to get out of that situation. That's not what I'm advocating for. I'm helping people do what I've learned to do, which is gain greater peace. Whether you want to be around them or not is a separate decision. That's a different discussion. It's about how do you feel when you're around them, or how do you feel when you think about them? Are you suffering or are you at peace?
Yeah, I love that. We only have a couple more minutes. Was there anything I didn't ask you that I should have, or any parting comments? Obviously, I'm going to leave links to the book and all the things in the show notes, but was there anything I missed? Is there anything that you want?
Oh, this was fun. I enjoyed the conversation, and I just want people to remember that they're capable of way more than they think. Remember those rats who swam for 60 hours instead of just 15 minutes? You're just scratching the surface. You can do so much more than you think you're capable of if you have that belief.
Yeah, so powerful. Thank you so much for your time today. It was such an honor. I really appreciate your work. Thank you for doing all the interpreting that we need to really start taking action on the things that we actually know to do that will change our lives, and we'll have six-pack abs and be billionaires.
Or just be at peace. That's cool too.
or that.
It's better. I know a lot of billionaires. Not a lot. I know some billionaires.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people with six-pack abs. Some of them aren't so at peace. I'd rather take the peace.
Me too. Well, thank you so much for this, and congratulations on such another amazing book.
Thank you so much. Such a pleasure. Thank you.
One last thing before you go, you can follow the podcast on Instagram for daily inspiration at ODAT Podcast. And if you'd like to get a biweekly email from me with recommendations to books I'm reading, meditations I love, or other recovery podcasts, just sign up for it at odatchat.com. That's ODAAT chat.com. And if you do, I hope you enjoy it.
Craving the coffee flavor you love, but without the caffeine? Kachava's got you covered with their newest coffee flavor. This all-in-one nutrition shake delivers bold, authentic flavor, crafted from premium decaffeinated Brazilian beans. With 25 grams of protein, 6 grams of fiber, greens, and so much more. Treat yourself to the flavor and nutrition your body craves. Go to kachava.com and use code FITNESS. New customers get 15% off their first order. That's KACHAVA.com, code FITNESS.